There was a murderous wind raging through the streets of Munich when I went to work that night. It was one of those cold, dry Bavarian winds that blow up from the Alps with an edge like a new razor blade, and makes you wish you lived somewhere warmer, or owned a better overcoat, or at least had a job that didn't require you to hit the clock at 6 p.m. I'd pulled enough late shifts when I'd been a cop with the murder commission in Berlin, so I should have been used to bluish fingers and cold feet, not to mention lack of sleep and the crappy pay. On such nights, a busy city hospital is no place for a man to find himself doomed to work as a porter right through until dawn. He should be sitting by the fire in a cosy beer hall with a foaming mug of white beer in front of him, while his woman waits at home, a picture of connubial fidelity, weaving a shroud and plotting to sweeten his coffee with something a little more lethal than an extra spoonful of sugar. Of course, when I say I was a night porter, it would have been more accurate to say that I was a mortuary attendant. But being a night porter sounds better when you're having a polite conversation. Mortuary attendant makes a lot of people feel uncomfortable. The living ones, mostly. But when you've seen as many corpses as I have, you tend not to bat an eyelid about being around death so much. You can handle any amount of it after 4 years in the Flanders slaughterhouse. Besides, it was a job, and with jobs as scarce as they are these days, you don't look a gift horse in the mouth. Even the spavined nag that had been bought for me, sight unseen, outside the doors of the local glue factory by the old comrades in Paderborn. They got me the job in the hospital after they had given me a new identity, and 50 marks. So until I could find myself something better, I was stuck with it, and my customers were stuck with me. I certainly didn't hear any of them complaining about my bedside manner. You'd think the dead could look after themselves, but of course people die in hospital all the time, and when they do, they usually need a bit of help getting around. It seems the days of patient defenestration are over. It was my job to go and fetch the bodies off the wards and take them down to the house of death, and there to wash them before leaving them out for collection by the undertakers. In winter, we didn't worry about chilling the bodies or spraying the place for flies. We didn't have to. It was just a few degrees above freezing in the mortuary. Much of the time I worked alone, and after a month at the Schwabing hospital, I suppose I was almost used to it, to the cold, to the smell, and to the feeling of being alone and yet not quite alone, if you know what I mean. Once or twice a corpse moved by itself. They do that sometimes, wind usually, which I'll admit was a little unnerving, but perhaps not surprising. I'd been alone for so long that I'd started talking to the radio. At least I assumed that's where the voices were coming from. In the country that produced Luther, Nietzsche, and Adolf Hitler, you can never be absolutely sure about these things. On that particular night, I had to go up to the emergency room and fetch a corpse that would have given Dante pause for thought. An unexploded bomb. It's estimated that there are tens of thousands of these buried all over Munich, which often makes reconstruction work hazardous, had gone off in nearby Mussach, killing at least one and injuring several others in a local beer hall that took the worst of the blast. I heard it go off just before I started my shift, and it sounded like a standing ovation in Asgard. If the glass in the window in my room hadn't already been scotch-taped against drafts, it would certainly have shattered. So, no real harm done. What's one more German killed by a bomb from an American flying fortress after all these years? The dead man looked like he'd been given a front-row seat in some reserved circle of hell, where he'd been chewed up by a very angry minotaur before being torn to pieces. His jiving days were over, given that his legs were hanging off at the knees, and he was badly burned, too. His corpse gave off a lightly barbecued smell that was all the more horrifying because somehow it was also vaguely and inexplicably appetizing. Only his shoes remained undamaged. Everything else, clothes, skin, hair, was a sight. I washed him carefully. His torso was a piñata of glass and metal splinters, and did my very best to fix him up a bit. I put his still shiny salamanders in a shoebox, just in case someone from the deceased's family turned up to identify the poor devil. You can tell a lot from a pair of shoes, but this couldn't have been a more hopeless task if he'd spent the last 12 days being dragged through the dust behind someone's favourite chariot. Most of his face resembled a half-kilo of freshly chopped dog meat, and sudden death looked like it had done the guy a favour. Not that I'd ever have said as much. Mercy-killing is still a sensitive subject, on a long list of sensitive subjects in modern Germany. It's small wonder there are so many ghosts in this town. Some people go their whole lives without ever seeing a ghost. Me, I see them all the time. Ghosts I sort of recognized, too. 12 years after the war, it was like living in Frankenstein Castle, and every time I looked around, I seemed to see a pensive, plaintive face I half remembered from before. Quite often, these looked like old comrades, but just now and again they resembled my poor mother. I miss her a lot. Sometimes the other ghosts mistook me for a ghost, which was hardly surprising either. It's only my name that's changed, not my face. More's the pity. Besides, my heart was playing up a bit, like a difficult child, except that it wasn't so young as that. Every so often it would jump around for the sheer hell of it, as if to show me that it could, and what might happen to me if it ever decided to have a break from taking care of a tiresome Fritz like me.